our November ILC meeting. We're excited to have those of you here joining us in the room, as well as those that are joining us online. We have a lot of great information that will be shared today, and again, we're going to provide an opportunity at the end for you, so you can just kind of planting a seed. If you have something great that's going on in your district that you want to share, please share during that time. That'll be at the very end. Tom is going to take care of facilitating that for us. Or if there's a question that you have for the group, that'd be a great time to ask that as well. So we're going to go ahead and kick things off. Just a reminder for those of you that are in the room today, when you're joining the meeting, you will probably want to join via companion mode so that you have access to the chat. Again, just a reminder about that. Another quick reminder about our ESC website. I've heard a lot of great feedback from people saying they really appreciate things being centrally located. It's easy to find things. So just a reminder, if you haven't bookmarked that, or if you haven't had an opportunity to share that with people in your district, please do so. We have those resources for you and for your district to be able to access. So again, just a reminder about that. For our agenda today, we have a few folks that are community partners joining us. We'll hear from Joel Daniel Harris from TomTod today. We have Sarah Music, the Prevention Education Coordinator from ODE. She will be joining us today. We're excited to hear, we've got a district spotlight. We'll be hearing from Jeff Wagner and Thea from Sandy Valley. They're here to talk about their EL plan, and Dana will give us more background information about that. We're excited about it. We'll also have an opportunity for updates from SST9, as well as our ESC consultants. All good. All right. Just a reminder for norms, for those of you that are joining us online, make sure that you have your microphone on mute, and then add information to the chat box to be able to participate throughout the meeting as well. A reminder about attendance, make sure that you please complete the attendance form so that we can get those certificates generated out to you. We want to make sure that that information is coming to you in a timely manner, as well as the link again for the slides today. And just a quick heads up also, on our ESC site, if you go to the ILC section, all of our slides are also linked to there as well. So that archive is just ready for you as well. So again, slides are located here, but we also have them on our site. I'm just going to take this time just to provide you with a couple of quick updates from a leadership perspective. You know, over the past few years, we've been facilitating the High Impact Conference and had great participation, great people presenting, people from your districts, people from outside the districts, some people that we would not have had the opportunity to hear from had they not participated virtually and off-site. This year, we're very excited to be able to say we're going to host it on site. We have a great host, Plain Local, will be serving as our host this year, and we appreciate that partnership. Super excited to be able to offer that up. Please know that we're going to be reaching out to you, because the conference is only going to be as great as the people that are participating, the presenters, the people that are attending. So we want you to know we need your partnership in that work as well. So that's just a quick reminder. That will be June 13th and 14th. You may want to mark your calendar now for that. And then just a quick reminder about the district spotlight. So during the ILC meetings and the CD meetings, we've had the opportunity to hear from different districts, sharing great things that are happening in their district. At our CD meeting last month, we heard from Camp Local and Green. We also heard from Fearless, Plain, and Tuslaw, talking about that ACE work. Today we have an opportunity to hear from Sandy Valley. As we're going on throughout the year, I know, I'm telling you, I know there are great things happening in your district. So please let us know if there's something that you want to share, or if you know something else is going on in somebody else's district and you want to nudge a friend or let us know, please shoot us an email. Let us know what needs to be shared, who needs to hear that great information. Last year we had North Canton share their technology, the work there and how they were setting subs up to be successful. That was greatly appreciated. People benefited from that. We heard from Kansas City last year talking about their professional learning day and that opportunity. And those ideas are great ideas that we get from you in the district. So please, again, let us know about the great things that are happening. We want to be able to share those throughout the ILC and CD meetings. This slide is just information regarding the High Impact Conference. Just a link there. So we're accepting session proposals. If you have teachers in your building that are doing amazing things, instructional coaches, building principals, if you're doing amazing things, please feel free to submit a link for a proposal. We'd love to hear about those great things that are happening. And I have to say this, after working with lots of teachers throughout the greater Stark County area, they may not think that the work that they're doing in their classroom is wonderful because they do it every single day. But those people that are doing wonderful things, please let us know about them so that others can hear about that great work too. Because we want to try to replicate those great practices throughout the greater Stark County area. So just information regarding the High Impact Conference. And at this time, we're going to hear from, I hope we have him available with us online. Brian, do you see Joel with us today? Okay, very good. All right, Joel is raising his hand, so he is here. He's present. Thank you, Joel. So this time, we're going to hear from Joel Daniel Harris. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and turn it over to Joel.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Is my audio working? Wonderful. Excellent. Well, wonderful to be with all of you this morning. I'm apologize that I can't be there in person. I'm actually over in Boston for a few days here, and but didn't want to miss this opportunity to connect with you. It's such a privilege to just have a few moments to share of your time. My name is Joel Daniel Harris, and I'm the executive dreamer at Tom Todd Ideas. And at Tom Todd, we work exclusively with middle schoolers. We think that middle schoolers don't just have possibilities in the future, but they have real abilities for today. And so we create all sorts of immersive opportunities for them to explore their communities and to put skills into action while continuing to develop those habits and skills for the future at the same time. We've had the privilege of partnering with a variety of school districts throughout Stark County over the last decade, and just really love working with so many of the public school districts here in Stark County. So I just wanted to provide a real brief overview of some of what we do and a few of the openings into 2023 that we have. We have school districts come to us relatively regularly asking how they can get involved, and I want to make sure that no one misses out on opportunities that are there. So our programming, we have in-school programming, we have after-school programming, and we have summer enrichment programming. And so basically, if there's a time of day and middle schoolers around, we're happy to come alongside public schools and help make some really great opportunities happen for them to explore the community. What does our programming do? We really dive into exploring the community. So if you're looking for community connectedness opportunities for your middle schoolers, we're a great partner to be able to help establish that. We have a strong grounding in social emotional learning competencies, and students, what we found is middle schoolers get a pretty bad rap a lot of times. They tend to be called, they have too much energy, or they're immature, or all the negative things that can sometimes come along with middle schoolers. We see that they have actually wonderful empathy, that they have great passion and wonderful imagination. And so how can we really leverage those great abilities and personality assets that middle schoolers have? And so we're able to explore social emotional competencies with middle schoolers through that empathy, through that self-reflection, through that community connectedness. We also dive deep into 21st century learning skills. So our approach is all about collaboration, all about communication and connectedness into the community, and really developing those vital skills that will help them succeed both today in school, but then also tomorrow in the marketplace. And so that community connectedness and the marketplace readiness are significant components. We do all this through a design thinking lens, and so students get to explore ideas, they get to define the things that they see in the community, create ideas in response to what they see in their community, and then share those ideas out with the community. We have other opportunities that are aligned that actually could help them walk those ideas from a big concept to an actual reality on the ground. And we love it when we get to partner with middle schoolers to put their ideas into motion in real time. And we use what we call a quad P approach. So we're all familiar with PBL, but then when we say PBL, what do we mean by the P? And the PBL is always the question. And so really we look at project, problem, place, and passion, and interconnecting all four of those into really powerful outcomes for middle schoolers and for their communities. So right now, just to put a little context of districts that we work with, we're very active large-scale partnerships with Canton City School District, Plain Local Schools, North Canton City Schools, Lake, Barberton, and Akron Public Schools. And we'd love to work with other districts as well. And the size and scale of what that partnership can look like, we can work through as well. I'm going to put in the chat both our website and my personal email address. And so if after today you want to send me an email and say I'd love to chat, I'd totally be up for coming to your school or hopping on a call like this to talk through more details. But some highlights of kind of what's coming up in 2023, just so everyone knows what opportunities are available. In next spring, we're all booked up. Next summer, we will be running and intending to run about 12 creator mini camps. So those are half day, 4 half days generally, and they're oftentimes run as part of a school's summer school programming, summer enrichment programming, and we provide some of the enrichment programming as part of that. So we're planning on running 12 of those, and 9 of those spots are spoken for already. So we only have a few of those spots left. So I'd encourage you to reach out to me if you'd like to explore, even if you're just sort of like, I don't even totally know what that means. I'm happy to have that conversation, unpack that more. Or if you're ready to take some actions, I'm happy to go there as well. 3 of those that are already spoken for are Stark Makers Camp. If some of you might be familiar, last summer in partnership with the Stark County Manufacturing Workforce Partnership Development Group, I can't believe I got all of those words in the right order, but I did. And they launched a new Stark Makers Camp to help local middle schoolers explore our manufacturers and the incredible things that they're doing and the job opportunities that exist in that field as well with our manufacturing partners here in the county. And so we had a great pilot year, and we just ran 1 week of camp with about 25 middle schoolers. But this year we're expanding to 3 different weeks, and that is a free camp that's open to any Stark County middle schooler. And there'll be more details coming out, I would say probably within the next month or 2. And we'll definitely push that out to this group of folks so that you can get it out to your students. But any Stark County middle schooler is eligible to attend this camp for free. And so we'll make sure we share that information with you so that they can get signed up and be a part of exploring the manufacturers in our community. In addition to those mini camps, which we have just a few spots left that we could partner with districts on, we'll be doing 8-week-long Camp What If spots as well. Camp What If is a deep dive into a community. It's 5 days, every day from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. A deep dive into community exploration, ideation and response to the assets and challenges that middle schoolers discover in their communities, and then sharing out ideas that they come up with authentic community partners. So of those 8 opportunities we'll be offering this summer, 7 of them are already pre-slated. But if you are interested in helping us explore a new community, we'd love to have a conversation about that. Right now, the 3 communities that we'll be doing multiple weeks of camp in each of these are the city of Akron, the city of Canton, and the city of North Canton. But if you live in a different community in Stark County and you'd be interested in probably working with a few partners to put this together, I'd totally be up for that conversation. And then the last part of summer programming that we offer is Explorers Camps, and that's how do we help middle students transition from elementary into middle school. And we know that that transition is such a pivotal transition to make sure that students are really able to connect successfully. And so some of those mini camp offerings that we make available are what we call What If Explorers, and it helps kids to make that transition well. And we piloted that last summer with North Canton, and are happy to talk with districts as well about that. Thanks, Barb. I've loved partnering with you over the years as well in the chat. So the last thing I'll say, and then if there's any questions, I'm happy to take just a brief moment to talk about those as well. But we also do during the school year programming. And so during the school day, we come into the school 1 day a week for either a semester or a school year. And all of those districts that I listed earlier are currently doing that kind of programming. And so we would have some availability starting in the fall of 2023, but those conversations would need to start here really soon. So I do encourage you, please, to reach out to me by email, and I'm happy to talk through more of that. But we come in, we help those middle schoolers explore their community. We use the classroom setting, but we also have guaranteed experiences of a field trip out into the community, as well as bringing community leaders and community experts in for community conversations with the kids. And it's always an incredibly powerful experience. And our staff has a wonderful time working alongside your team and your students to really help them to see what is right now in their community, what could be if they were to become actively involved and put their ideas into motion. So I'm happy to field a couple of questions. That was a lot of information I threw really fast, but I wanted to respect your time. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Does anyone have any questions for Joel Daniel Harris this morning? Yes.
I don't have a question, but just a shout out. I think the stuff he does with kids and the middle school kids is amazing. And if you're not getting involved, you're cheating your kids.
Thanks, Brian. How's that for Africa?
Thanks, Brian. So kind. Brian was one of our first partners, a decade ago when I showed up in his office and was, so appreciate that.
I will second that. North Canton has been blessed by our partnership with Tom Todd, and our middle school students have blossomed and grown exponentially.
Thanks, Denise.
Starting your morning, Joel.
I know. I'm gonna head out in my day with a full heart. So.
Great. Anyone else? We appreciate your time this morning. And as he mentioned, if you are interested, I think his website is listed. Or did you pop your email in chat already, Joel? Okay, great.
I did, yes.
Okay, very good.
It's in the bottom of the
Oh,
slide,
yes,
too.
perfect. In the bottom of the slides too. Great. Thank you so much. Have a
Thank you.
wonderful day.
Appreciate all the work that all of you are doing. It's so powerful and so important. So thank you so much for the opportunity to come alongside of you.
We appreciate it. Thanks. Have a great day. All right. Perfect. All right. Very good. Let's see. All right. Next up, we are also excited to hear from Sarah Music. She is joining us from ODE. She's the Prevention Education Coordinator. She's going to talk a little bit about House Bill 123, the Safety and Violence Education, or the SAVE Students Act. Sarah, are you joining us this morning?
Yes, I'm here. Good morning.
Perfect. We're glad to have you here. I want to welcome you to our ILC meeting.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm going to apologize in advance for my voice. I've got a cold cough situation happening, so sorry about that. But I'm so glad to be here today and present some information on the Safe Students Act and hopefully answer any questions that you all have. So today's session, I guess, will just be a brief overview. There's a lot of information in the Safe Students Act, so hopefully this is a starting point and just kind of raising awareness about the requirements in the Act. Excuse me. So the Safe Students Act was put in to effect through House Bill 123. So if you've heard of House Bill 123, that is that's part of the Safe Students Act. So House Bill 123 includes 5 different pieces within the legislation. There we go. The first one being threat assessment teams and training, anonymous reporting systems, emergency management plans, and then more specific to violence prevention clubs and evidence-based prevention education. So the legislation was put into effect back in March of 2021, but they all have different effective dates. So we'll kind of talk through the timeline and implementation of each of those. And then when we talk to schools and districts about how to implement all of the different pieces within the Safe Students Act, we typically try to relate that to a multi-tiered systems of support or a PBIS framework so that they can see how they can incorporate the requirements within the Act into the prevention and mitigation and safety strategies that they're already doing. So you'll see here an example of a PBIS or a multi-tiered system of support and how Tier 1 can relate to prevention at a universal level of prevention. Tier 2 for some of students is selective prevention or targeted supports. Tier 3 for a few of your students who need those additional individualized and intensive supports. So as I talk through the different pieces within the legislation, I would just ask that you think about in the schools or districts that you're in or working with how each of those different strategies could be incorporated within a multi-tiered system of support. So the first requirement of the Safe Students Act, threat assessment team and threat assessment training. So the legislation states that all districts must create a threat assessment team for each building that serves grades 6 through 12. And that team must be multidisciplinary when possible. And the legislation lists school administrators, mental health professionals, school resource officers, and then any other school personnel or necessary staff to be on the threat assessment team. So that multidisciplinary approach is really important when we talk about threat assessment and prevention, and that's why it's included in the legislation here. If you already have a threat assessment team, that's great. If you have a team that includes all of these people, they likely can also serve as your threat assessment team, so long as they're receiving threat assessment training. And I will provide the slides. You probably already have access to them. I know the link was put in the chat there. But there is links to the Ohio Revised Code section where each of this exact legislation is embedded within each slide. So threat assessment teams is the first part, developing a team. The second part is threat assessment training. So a member of your threat assessment team must receive threat assessment training upon appointment and once every 3 years thereafter. So the threat assessment training that the team must receive has to be approved by the Ohio School Safety Center within the Department of Public Safety. And they have a threat assessment website where all of those approved trainings are posted. And then I'll also give a shout out to our ESCs within the state who are helping us roll out a regional model of the CSTAG or Comprehensive School Threat Assessment Guidelines training model, which is an approved training for threat assessment teams. And that's available for free through your ESC. So if you have not had a threat assessment team training within your school or district, feel free to reach out to your ESC and they can connect you with the regional ESCs that are rolling out that training.
And Sarah, if I could just step in from the Stark County ESC, I'm Patty Fesser. And we have 8 districts already signed up for the November 7th, which is Monday, the CSTAG training. We've got 3 great trainers locally. Chris Smith, our SRO lead, Krista Gerhart from Camp Local, and also Nick from Marlington Local. So, and we have 2 additional dates for that one-day training that are still open and available for December 6th and January 13th. And that's just one of the model options, but it's a great opportunity to get your teams together and also learn together with your other district partners.
Patty, would you be willing to send out an email to the group after the meeting to let them know about those dates again?
Sure.
That would be helpful.
I'll forward you what we forwarded it to the superintendents about a month ago, or a few weeks ago.
Perfect, thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah. Yep. So the threat assessment team needs to take one of those approved trainings. And as was mentioned, that CSTAG training is available and is approved. The last piece of threat assessment training is that a model threat assessment plan has been made by the Ohio School Safety Center, and that's available on their website. And that was part of the legislative requirement, is that the School Safety Center publish a threat assessment plan as a model. Emergency management plans, this one changed very little. They're still required. The only thing House Bill 123 or the Safe Students Act did was move rulemaking authority from the Department of Education to the Department of Public Safety. So your reports now go to the Director of Public Safety. And then anonymous reporting systems were another requirement that were put into place by House Bill 123. So every school district is required to have an anonymous reporting system, and the district is allowed to choose any anonymous reporting system they would like, so long as it meets the guidelines listed within the legislation. And the anonymous reporting system needs to keep track of the number of tips received, and this is reported at the end of each year: number of tips received, disciplinary actions, and mental wellness referrals resulting from those tips. Again, one example of an anonymous reporting system is the Safer Schools tip line, which is available for free through the Ohio School Safety Center. You'll see the little example like poster or icon there from the School Safety Center. They have an anonymous reporting system that any district can sign up for that allows students, families, community members to put in an anonymous tip if they're concerned about a student's wellness, or if there's a crisis situation, they can text that tip line. Ohio Homeland Security Analyst will answer that tip and report that information out as appropriate. And then when we get more into the prevention requirements, the first one is violence prevention clubs. So this one is actually not a requirement, but it states that schools may designate a student-led violence prevention club in schools serving grades 6 through 12. So not a requirement that you create a violence prevention club in your school if it serves grades 6 through 12. However, if you have a violence prevention club, it must follow these 4 criteria. So it must be open to all students, have an adult advisor, and then work to implement the suicide, violence prevention, and social inclusion activities, and then foster opportunities for student leadership development. So if you have a violence prevention club, it needs to be doing those 4 things. There is no requirement that you create a club if you don't already have one. And then this is the piece that was added to health education prescribed curriculum. So evidence-based prevention education is now required on the 3 topics listed on this slide. So schools must provide at least 1 hour or 1 standard class evidence-based instruction in each of the topics. So it's 1 hour in suicide awareness and prevention, 1 hour in safety training and violence prevention, and 1 hour in social inclusion. And the instruction is to occur every year for every student in every grade 6 through 12. And we know that not every student in grades 6 through 12 is in a health education course. If that's the case, then the instruction should be provided in a different subject area to make sure that every student in those grades is receiving education on those 3 topics. And then similarly to the threat assessment training, the programs that can be used to meet this requirement have to be approved, and those are listed on the Department of Education's website. So the Department of Education, Public Safety, and Addiction Services review all of the programs that are submitted, And if they meet all of the legislative requirements, we do approve those and list those on the Safe Students Act webpage. So that is available to go and take a look at and see which programs have been approved for each different topic area. And then there's also a prevention program submission webpage. So if a school or district has a program that they've been using or they think might be a good fit, they can submit that program for review. And that review portal is open all the time. We review programs on an ongoing basis. There is no like deadline for when it needs to be submitted. So you can just go ahead and submit a program for review. We'll get the work group together. We review the programs. Typically, it takes us about 30 days to review a program. And if it's approved, it would be added to that website as a program that schools and districts can use to meet the requirements. And then because there are so many components of House Bill 123 or the Safe Students Act, I've got a little timeline here. So as I mentioned, the legislation was originally passed in March of 2021, and that is when the violence prevention clubs and those 4 criteria went into effect. Also, anonymous reporting systems did go into effect in July of 2021. So starting last school year, all districts should have selected an anonymous reporting system and begun to collect tips. And then data from the end of that first school year was due in June of 2022. So everybody should be implementing an anonymous reporting system, reporting that data to the Department of Public Safety at this point. And then the second kind of timeline is for this current school year, which is when a model threat assessment plan from the School Safety Center was due. And that went on the website in September of 2022. And then everyone should have their threat assessment team ready by March of 2023. So we've got a couple months left here. So as was mentioned, there's a November, December, and January training still available there in Stark County. So you want to make sure you know who's on your district's threat assessment team and make sure they get trained if that's something you participate in. And then the last piece is the prevention education, which were those suicide prevention, violence prevention, and social inclusion curriculum embedded within health education. And that is going into effect next school year. So starting July 1 of 2023 is when all of our schools and districts need to be implementing those 3 pieces of instruction. And then, as I mentioned, that was a brief overview with a lot of information. So I have included my email address on here, as well as our general Safe Students Act email address. If you are looking to submit a program or have questions about how to submit a program, you can reach out at the prevention approval inbox as well. And then I will go ahead and take any questions if anybody has them. If not, feel free to send me an email and I will get back to you that way with any questions or concerns.
Does anyone have questions for Sarah this morning? Anybody online?
If no one asks from the actual districts, because I know these questions are percolating and I've heard the questions. Sarah, if it's possible, if there are districts across the state that have figured out where and how to fit the prevention education curriculum, that suicide prevention curriculum, into the day of 6th through 12th graders when they don't have health education every year, if there's some solid, helpful examples from other districts that have figured it out, that would really, really help. Because I know our districts are trying to figure out how to do that. That's one question. And the second question is that there were 2 programs that were listed for the past year, if not more, Hope Squad and Sources of Strength, that some districts across the state, and I know within our county, have already begun to implement because they saw that as helping meet that House bill. And those have recently been removed. We just happened to see that they were removed. So if you could give some guidance about that, because those two programs were a way, and really an evidence-based way, to get the content to students that didn't just involve a 1-hour course. So any guidance to help our districts really think through best practice for implementation for a topic as difficult as this, if you could give us some guidance. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I can definitely continue as I hear from schools and districts that are successfully implementing, potentially working on creating like examples on the webpage or something lines, case studies is kind of what I was thinking. But I'll continue to keep note of that and see if we can share those examples as I find them out. And I know that we really want schools and districts to be able to choose the program that works best for them. So I know there's not a one size fits all, like this program is going to work for every school. It really is going to depend, again, like you mentioned, on how they're choosing to fit it in and what subject area they might be using it, if they're doing what their approach is to that. So I think it is going to be different for every school and district, but if we can find some districts that are willing to share how they're successfully implementing, we'll see what we can do to share that out for sure. And then the second piece, as you mentioned, sources of strength and Hope Squads were recently removed from the list of approved programs. And that came about because the 1 hour duration of the programs as listed in the legislation, that was not taken into account when the programs were first reviewed. So those programs, because they are more peer-based, there wasn't that 1 hour of instruction listed within their programming. Excuse me. So because the legislation says 1 hour or one standard class period, we had to ensure that there was a way that duration of programming was being measured. So we are working with both sources of strength at the national and state level, as well as Grant Us Hope for Hope Squads, to collect more data from them and figure out if there's a way that we can measure that duration of programming and show that it's still within that level of fidelity to meet their evidence base of programming if students were to receive 1 hour of contact with those programs. So we continually update the website. So if we do receive information that ensures that the programs are meeting that 1 hour and it's still within fidelity of implementation, then those could be added back to the webpage.
Thank you, Sarah.
And I have total confidence in our team here that as that information is being shared from ODE, Patty and her team does a great job sharing information with us here. So we appreciate all that everyone is doing to try to help support districts, to help support teachers, to help support students. Thank you, Sarah. Anyone else with a question here? Sarah, we appreciate your time this morning and the information that you shared with us. And again, appreciate the collaboration and connection between the ESC and ODE as we all work together to help support students in Ohio.
Yep, thank you so much. I hope y'all have a great day.
Thank you. All right, next up, I want to introduce Sandy Valley team, but I'd like Dana to come on up too, because Dana's going to provide us with some great information. She actually was the one that kind of nominated Sandy Valley to share information with you today. So I'm going to let Dana, turn it over to Dana at this point, and excited to hear from our team at Sandy Valley.
Yeah, so just to give you a little background of why I asked Thea and Jeff to present, over the last 4 years, I think, Terrell Schwick and myself, Terrell from SST9, we have put on an English learner and students with disabilities series, learning series, and because it's very difficult to distinguish or disaggregate language difference from language disability, and there's often the assumption that they're not learning quick enough, so it must be a disability. So we put on this learning series for the past few years. We're continuing it again this year. And last year we brought in Steve Gill, where we looked at the critical data that we need to collect for language learners that is important, specific information that we may not necessarily collect for native English speaking peers. And so looking at that to determine if you get to the ETR point. But we had teams from all the districts. So to participate in these series, we asked that districts had an administrator, an EL staff member, intervention specialist, school psychologist, just a variety, and all our teams had different folks at the table. And all of our districts were at different entry points with the information. And they had their own different needs based on their populations and their experiences with English learners. And so Sandy Valley, and I did update the slide where Thea, your name's on there too, by the way, it just isn't showing here. So Sandy Valley has traditionally had low numbers of English learners.
We have
4, okay. But this was important, the interdisciplinary team that they developed. So they had an TESOL teacher on the team, administrator, Thea's a data coach, and they're gonna share the team members that they had. But it was important for everybody to be at the table to have these discussions about the English learners. So as they share with you what project, because then we worked with the teams throughout the year as each team had their own project. A team may have done a case study or reevaluated their IAT process. And so the teams all had different projects based on where they were and the needs in their districts. And so Jeff and Thea are going to share about their team project. So
I'll let you run this. First, real quick, I know when Sarah Music was talking, something popped in my head, so I wanted to back up a little bit to the House bill. We have actually thought about it. We're one of the districts that has an all-in social justice team, and we do a mental health and wellness day. We've done that every year. We are looking at, can we fit those 3 modules into that day? Because all of our students, there's certain sessions like CPR. We make all freshmen go to the CPR session. So we're trying to figure out if we can fit those 3 into that day as well. There's just so many things now that are mandatory, and we had a lot of fun things in there on that day for them. So we want to see if we can balance that, but that's just one thought that we had. And another was also at like midterm exams, we do early dismissal for students that don't have exams. And we may look at that time as on those 3 days of exams, can we do an hour each on those? So those just a couple of ideas to throw out there. So you saw really the person that should be leading this is probably not here. Suzanne Baker was one of the leads with this along with Thea. This was kind of their brainchild. I don't want to take credit for somebody else's work. I get the big old title of Title III coordinator, but I am blessed that I have a group of people that really took this on, and then I just popped into meetings and popped out of meetings. Also mean no disrespect. There are districts in this room, you have over 100 plus 200 EL students. We know that we just have our lowly 4, and you would take, I can tell you right now, any of you that have EL students, you would take our 4 in a heartbeat because the lowest scores are like 2s and 3s and they all speak English. Okay, so I know what many of you are dealing with. We have, for the second time in 9 years this year, we have a family that requested their communications go home in a different language, and it's Spanish. And we have 2 wonderful Spanish teachers, and they're helping us with translations and things like that so that we can be compliant. So we as a group in our district, and that's kind of what I wanted to spotlight, it's more about the teams than it is the administrators. All of those groups, the names below me are the ones that are making this run right now, and we're trying to be proactive for that situation where maybe we end up having 10, 15, 20 EL students move into our district. We're all blessed to have Dana, and that's our main resource that we have used, but we wanted to be able to sustain moving forward. So you can see on our team, Thea is curriculum support. She is also an instructional coach. You could also put she is our OELPS and OELPA test coordinator. We have Suzanne Baker, who's a school psychologist, and she was the one that came to me initially with, hey, maybe this is something that we need to do even though we only have our 2, 3, 4 kids. Melanie Van Meter is actually I don't know what it's home ec teacher, but she was very passionate about getting the TESOL certification and being part of the team, so we appreciated that. Steph McCoy is one of our 2 high school guidance counselors. Alexa Goffis is a speech pathologist, and then Cindy Felix is one of our elementary intervention specialists. Right now, our 9th and our 10th grade teams are the most involved because those are the 2 areas where we have EL students that they need a little bit of extra support from those teams, okay? So there are several other names that could be up there. That would be our Spanish teachers and some of the other staff that are involved with this. But that's kind of how this started, was with Suzanne and that primary team of 7 that's up at the top, and then we adjust and expand it as needed. It starts with that group, and then from there we figure out where we need to go. As they began working, they really found that there were 3 main areas to be established, and that was to organize the students, organize materials, and then organize protocols. And there's a flow chart that Thea will go over with you that was created from this, that we have used now for a couple of students, and we will continue moving forward. Who's running the show? Brian, can you actually click on that sheet? I don't know if you can make it a little bit bigger. I don't have my glasses on.
Mr. Spreadsheet.
Now that's a little bit big. You can see the 4 areas, the ELL screened and identified, not identified, suspected, and then EL ruled out. And then we're just keeping that. We will keep that as a running spreadsheet, and then that way we can also make notes in there. We have been fortunate that over the years, the majority of our EL students have actually tested out at some point, and then we go into the monitoring process. So this spreadsheet, my thought, and you'll see the next steps at the end, is that we can add a tab to this for monitoring, and then that's where we'll place those students moving forward. Did you want to add to that one?
Well, when we got started there, we realized we had students in our district that we weren't sure even if they were EL, we suspected maybe. And so we thought we needed to at least get their names on the sheet and then talk with Dana, maybe get the OLs, kind of review each of them individually. So these are actually students we have, the names have been changed obviously. But this is, the process we started with of trying to get organized, and where do we even begin with all of this?
Click on the draw. Okay, and then this is something that I think all of us are starting to use more or have been using for years, and that's to create a Google folder. And that's where we are housing our district's EL resources. We have the identification, that tool, the teacher guidance, and then district data. What we have determined is, as we have students, we have then had a team meeting with all of the teachers that would be involved with that student. And we have had Dana, as well as others, come in as resources to provide resources and understanding to those teachers. In our district, our staff does not understand an EL student because they haven't really had a true EL student that looks at them and doesn't understand any of the words coming out of their mouth. So we want to make sure that that is in place in case we get to that point. So, you want to click on that one or the flow chart? Yeah.
This was our survey questions we started to look at. It's very much an ongoing process. We don't have a lot of answers to this, but just if we need to, we're going to continue to revisit it and see if we should be updating it. I think a lot of it's dealing with equity as well, making sure these students are getting provided the things they need. It also overlaps with the special education piece that Dana was talking about, making sure we're not over-identifying students as special ed when it's really a language barrier.
And one of the interesting situations we just had, we had a student move in and they came to us from New York. And in New York, they had actually tested out of the EL program, and I think it was in 2019. We decided that we were going to screen, and we screened this kid, and there's like 0 questions. It's all 2s and 3s. So I have no idea what New York standards are, but apparently ours are more stringent. So that student is back to classified as EL, and we're providing supports there.
The other interesting thing with this student is she does come with an IEP as well, so she's a perfect case study for us to review and see if we feel she also requires that IEP. And then the other thing is she's not on her medication when she took the OLs. So now we're really wondering, did we get an accurate score or not? But we didn't realize that.
And we'll be able to, so when we do the OL poll, we'll be able to find out from there and move forward.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
A lot on that one.
With that one student.
And Suzanne is now equipped to take that on.
Yeah,
Your
right.
school
We're going
site.
through that
Yes.
matrix currently and gathering the information to see where we want to go with it.
And then this is where Thea's going to come in, but they created a flow chart to establish kind of a set protocol and put it in place for when students register. We have had kind of in the past a little bit of a disconnect between enrollment, myself, our former Title III coordinator, things like that. And we wanted to kind of streamline things a little bit more, so that's where this came in. So.
Right, we had a couple students we realized as we were organizing that slipped through the cracks because they were actually foster children. And so when the home language survey was filled out, they said, yes, English is spoken in the home and all of this, but really the child had a first language other than English. And so then we were backpedaling and, the child had been in our district already a year or two. So we really created this so there was a second look at that home language survey. Our EMIS coordinator obviously registers the student and looks at that. So we kind of divided into 3 different types of students who might register. Ones who are obviously already identified, and then we know how to move forward with them. The middle section are ones who possibly could have another language, whether it's those kids in foster care or however they come to us, we suspect that maybe there is another language. And then the third one is just possibly, I guess that's more the foster child. The middle one's registered, has a language other than English. We already know that, but they haven't been identified yet. So we established the protocol where the instructional coaches would take a look at all the home language surveys as that second look, just to be sure there wasn't something on there that triggered our thinking as needing maybe the ALPS given.
And our case study for that middle one would have been a family that we had, it's been years now, but they all spoke Urdu. And they came in and the daughter was actually at like a senior level. And so there was a lot involved there with making sure that, one, we were providing services that needed, but then also we had a kid that was about to graduate technically in her own country and then came here and we had to try to make sure that we had all the requirements met. So that was the middle one, that we knew that this was an EL student, but they hadn't been identified yet because they were new.
So then as you move through the flow chart, it's not that lengthy, but the end result, no matter how they come to us, is that we're prepared to take care of that family and provide them with the things they need to be successful at Sandy Valley.
And then this is where we're at as a group. Feel prepared to assist EL students who score as progressing or intermediate. We recognize that we need to prepare for EL students with greater language needs, like several of you have in the room. And we have often picked the brains of several of you that are in the room or others within your district. and appreciate all the help that we've gotten. But we're just, this is kind of us in a nutshell. We just try to be proactive when we can and not reactive. So that's why we continue to work on this. And this is kind of how our teams run. So it's a little, they wanted a spotlight. I guess the spotlight is we try to empower, and in this case, it's worked very well because the team that we have that I work with has I think done a pretty bang up job for a starting point for us for the program. So.
You mentioned too, like forming this interdisciplinary team and everything, that you're thinking of doing that in other areas as well, and including.
Yeah, we're looking even at our DLT. We should have, so that everybody is aware, I think the majority of the people in the room know me. This is my second year now as the curriculum director of federal programs, whatever Mr. Fisher tells me to do. And in that capacity, I'm still learning things, but I also took over as the internal facilitator for our DLT and for the Ed Steps and whatnot. And one of the things that I am realizing is that we didn't have a representative from Gifted. We don't have representatives in there from some of our other supports and support services. So we also added in Jen Weigel. Many of you here, I think, know her. She is our mental health and wellness coordinator, as well as being a middle school guidance counselor. So she is now a member of the DLT as well. I'm dipping my toes in the water of starting to add parents to our group, as risky and as hard as that is, but they're the stakeholders and we need information from them. So those are kind of our next steps, and that's where any team that I am involved with, I look at it and I try to look at it with a greater lens now, and it's specifically from this process that I've kind of tried to expand my view. So.
Any questions for them?
God bless all of you that have the 10 or more. So.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. I think it's critical that they had all these different specialists at the table. That's the takeaway I want you guys to have. And also that they only, and I think when they started this project, there were fewer than 4 EL students. So I think it's actually, there was what? 2. There were 2 at this time.
They're both the kids of one of our teachers in the district too, so they're going to be okay.
So starting with just 2 ELs, because it's often easy to think, oh, I have this whole subgroup that we have lots of students that we need to focus on, and it's easy to ignore this population. But I have to tell you that this is a growing population in our county, in our region, and I recently, last week, I had a conversation with an immigration attorney who works with a lot of families in this area, and they are about 2 months behind at initial intake just for unaccompanied youth. So these are kids coming here without parents. So many of your districts are seeing a growth in that population just this year. And by growth, maybe you had 0 and now you have 2. That's a big increase. But maybe you had 100 and now you have 120. So it's comparative, but this population is coming. And so we need to be prepared, and I love the proactiveness that Sandy Valley took with such few students, and they didn't have protocols in place. So now they have a flow chart, they have protocols, and the other takeaway is that they had, because a couple of the kids were missed because of the foster care parents filling out that language usage survey. So now they have a process where other sets of eyes are looking at those language usage surveys also. And it's that interdisciplinary team that's looking at it. I love that it's the coaches who are looking at the language surveys in addition to the registrant person. And so what I want you to think about is at initial intake with any new students, who's looking at those questions? We have 7 required language usage survey questions. Who's looking at those questions to make that determination of who gets screened? Because if there's another language listed, we have to screen those students. Is that person trained every year in how to read that data? Because if there's any other language listed in 2 through 4, we have to assess. There's another, the 5 through 7 is about their previous educational experiences. So sometimes it might say English only, but then you see that they were born in another country or had an educational experience in another country. Those kids need assessed. So that's why it's important to have training year after year so that we don't miss these kids and we don't lose them in the educational process. So I am very grateful for their team and all the work that they did to put these protocols in place, even though there's so few students. So I would encourage you. We are continuing the series this year. We had a bilingual school psychologist last month. We're doing an Alt-O-Alpha training November 30th, and then we have Dr. Katie Durant, who is an SLP educator at Kent State, whose specialty is on multilingual students and assessments of multilingual students. And then we also have Shauna Benson. Once you have a student who is dually identified as a student with a disability and an English learner, what now? And how do we provide appropriate instruction? So that's our series for this year. If any of you have new school psychs or new team members in your district who was not fortunate enough to go through the Steve Guild training last year about all the critical data, I just got an email yesterday, and I just read it this morning, and so I was able to share here with you. OCECD, Office of Children, help me out, my SST folks, OCECD, Office of Children with Disabilities.
I don't know.
Beats me. Anyway, they're putting on free trainings in February. There's a whole series where Steve Gill's going to be doing these trainings. So there's one specifically on preschool, there's one on the K-12, one on assessments and assessing, and so that it will be free, and I will put that out to the EL coordinators and share that with everybody. So that's the learning series. The Alto-Alpha is effective this year, and I know I mentioned this before, but I want to make sure that our special ed folks in the room and joining virtually are aware that we need to get it in their IEP if they're going to take the alternative O-Alpha. So this is the alternative version of the annual English language proficiency assessment for those students with significant cognitive disabilities. And so this is the first year it is active, and it will, the windows somewhat overlaps with O-Alpha, but is before the other state alternative assessments. And so David Brower and Wendy Stoika from ODE plan to be here. We're going to do a hybrid meeting from 1 to 3 on November 30th in this room. And depending on weather, they said they'll be here. So they may be joining us virtually, but they hope to be here. So I hope that you send your team, and even if you do not have students that have significant cognitive disabilities and who are EL dually identified right now, you may in the future. So like the Sandy Valley team, let's be proactive, let's learn as much as we can so that we're ready and prepared, and understand that those IEPs, it needs to be stated that they take this alternative assessment. So we can go in, it is I'm not a special ed specialist, but I've been told by Wendy and David that you can go in even day of test to adjust the IEP to make sure that it includes that, even if it's not at that eval time. And so they'll be sharing that information. For your grades 3 through 12 students, it's going to be somewhat easier to identify which students would be on this, would take this assessment. But your K2 students are going to be a little bit more difficult because you haven't already made those decisions. And so be thinking about those kids, and they're going to give us more information about that. I also wanted to share about the ACT, and we're getting into that ACT season, and I know districts administer it at different times, but the question came up yesterday or 2 days ago, so I added it on here. There are EL accommodations for the ACT. However, you have to request those accommodations in writing in advance with proof that they are an EL. So an individual student report with their OELPA or OELP scores, that will suffice to prove that they are EL and that they are getting the state accommodations. But on the AC, I put that's a live link to their website that has the dates. So whenever you're administering the test, it tells you the dates that you need to make that request by before your test administration date. So I wanted to share that with you. A couple other things that I don't have on here, but this year I've been doing 4 quarterly ELPD days for your EL teachers, specifically for your TESOL language development program teachers. And we're really diving in deep to the EL standards. And so I really encourage you to make sure that you send your EL staff to those dates. We had a really great working day, but we were a small group of 12, and we are doing deep dives into those standards so we can grow in their language development and then literacy skills. So I encourage you to send those. Our next one's December 9th, to send your teachers to that. And then also next week is the Ohio TESOL Conference, and I know some of you are planning to go to that. The day before the conference on Thursday, the 10th, we have school visits, and we do have 3 opening spots for one of the schools, which is the Columbus City Schools International High School. It's a certified international high school. We have 3 slots. So if you email me, and I think the visit for that is 12:30 to 2. So if you have interest, you don't need to be attending the conference to do the school visit. I know Gary's planning on attending another district. I'm going to that one too on that Wednesday. But if you're interested, email me now and I can fill you in on the spreadsheet and we'll get you a spot. And the other thing, going back to the interdisciplinary teams, Christina Winland's my new partner this year here to help with the non-academic needs of the students. And she's been going to the care team meetings and the FSS, the family support specialist meetings and everything. Really want to encourage you to, when there is a referral to the care teams for a student who is an English learner, get your TESOL person on that team, at least for that student case study, because there are specific experiences and situations that if you don't have experience with that population, you may not be aware of, and you may not be aware of some of the barriers that the child or the families face. So please encourage that the EL team member gets on that care team for when the referrals are around the English learners. And we've had Paul Jackson from Dalton is an EL teacher who sits on his care team, and we've had him share with our coordinators and teachers, and it's really powerful, the work that can be done when it's an interdisciplinary team. So I just wanted to share that. And then world language updates. This is just quick, brief. Again, OTEST 2.0, I'm driving that home hard. Those are links to ODE's FAQ and materials and recordings. They've been doing lots and lots of trainings because the standards are very different from your content area standards. And so the HQSD needs to match the standards. And I think most of our districts are doing a pretty good job at using our rubrics and using appropriate student data for OTEST for our world language teachers. And similarly, it needs to be the same for our EL teachers as well. It needs to match our standards. The MAP test doesn't always match our standards. So if you have a TESOL teacher who you're evaluating through the MAP scores, it's not always appropriate because it doesn't correlate necessarily with our standards. So just keeping that in mind, and I put a link to the World Language Wednesdays. And I'm also, we have some, we have 1 or 2 people from our area who are on the Ohio Foreign Language Association. And so that's been a really great experience for our lead teacher meetings, for them to give that firsthand sharing and knowledge of what's happening around the state. So that's all I wanted to share. Thank you. All right. Thank you.
Dana, I appreciate all that you're doing to support the districts. I'm going to echo what Jeff said. Like, we value everything that you're doing, and There are times when I see Dana, she's running around the hall, running through the hallway on a phone call, and who knows who she's talking to. Because she's trying to take care of supporting you and supporting families and supporting students. So I appreciate you so much, Dana, and all that you're doing and your heart for kids. And again, just really want to echo what Dana was mentioning about the systems that Sandy Valley has in place, and thinking about the importance of having those systems in place, because as people move, as things change, if we have those systems in place, we have those questions, and I love what Thea mentioned, adding to those questions, like as we're learning more, we're going to improve on the types of things we're going to be looking at to make sure that we aren't missing any of those students. So appreciate, again, all that you're doing in Sandy Valley. And again, I know that there are amazing things happening in your districts, so please share those out with us. We're interested in hearing about those during CD meetings. At this time, we're going to take a 10-minute break. We've got some great things going on, and I'm going to start off by introducing our math dynamic duo here at the ESC. We've got amazing people, as you well know, on our team, and turn it over to Chris and Lavon.
All right, so the first update that we have is from ODE, so we always put a little disclaimer on that. It's what we know to be true right now, as of this moment at 9:24. So the alternative Algebra 2 pathways, if you're thinking about piloting one of those next school year, the 23-24 school year, the application process for that, when that window is opening next Thursday, the 10th, and closing on Friday, December 16th. So if that's something you're considering, you'll need to be, getting input from your counselors and your principals and curriculum, obviously, to decide, because that application window does have a closing before the end of the year. So just an FYI, the toolkits are linked there too if you want to check out the different portions that are available. And then the next update that we have is just basically want to touch base about the ACE network for our math folks and give you, just to give you a very brief background about what they are learning. And our focus this year for math is about math fluency, and we are just expanding that definition of math fluency. So typically, math fluency involves accuracy and efficiency, being able to get the correct answer and get it in a short amount of time, all about math facts. And yes, that is important. But we have really been diving deep into adding two important words to that accuracy and efficiency definition, and those words are flexibility and appropriately. So we are looking at students having the ability to choose a strategy, be flexible enough to choose a strategy, change a strategy if they need to, swap it out, know when it's appropriate, when it's not, in order to be able to get those facts accurately and efficiently. So it's not just those two pieces of information. Next slide. Sorry, look. There we go. This quote we'll just let you read on your own. It's just basically that if we are only asking kids to quickly and accurately just memorize and reproduce the answer, we are really stifling their procedural fluency, that they have to have lots of practice with lots of different strategies. One algorithm is not enough. We have to give them multiple ways to think about a problem, multiple ways to attack it, and that they have to have that, that time to know that I can make a mistake, I can go back, I can readjust, and really that's our focus. And we are really getting a lot of great feedback from our ACE representatives, trying this in their classrooms, slowing down, taking time to play some games, do some centers, teach routines and strategies, that students are really responding to this, especially our students who have special needs, because we are giving them more than one way, and we are giving them more time. And so our feedback's been great, and you'll see some of the feedback at the end for you to read on your own.
Okay. So I want to take you on a journey with me today a little bit, and I want you to look at this problem that's on the screen. And please don't freak out because you're not a math person. We are finding that that is part of the issue in math, is that it's okay to be not a math person and it's socially acceptable, where it is not socially acceptable to say you can't read. So we are trying to combat that and say we can do math and it is okay. So I'm going to guess that 90% of us, if not more in here, were taught one way to do this problem when we were in school. And if I had to guess, you're stacking them, and then you're multiplying and carrying, and then maybe you're adding a zero placeholder, and then maybe, and for kids, sometimes that doesn't make sense. So what we're working with our ACE representatives is, if you were not allowed to use that traditional algorithm that you were taught, how would you figure the answer out? And I don't want the answer. Not looking for the answer. I'm looking for thought processes. How would you figure out the product of 16 times 15 if you could not use the algorithm that you learned when you were in 3rd and 4th grade? Anybody struggling with it? What would you try? So no, I saw.
I maybe think a split the 15 and the 10 plus 5, because 10s are easy for me.
Great, so decomposing, finding a friendly number, is that what you were gonna say?
Saying 10 plus 6, 10 plus 5, and then FOIL.
Okay. And there's a lot of thinking that goes in that, right? Because 10 times 16 is much easier. And then 5 times 16 is not too bad either if you use what you knew about 10 times 16. 5 would be half of that, and so that you can take them together. Anybody thinking about it differently?
10 times 10, 6 times 5. Adam,
And then
just
add-
another way to do it.
Yeah, but it's another way to do it. So if you couldn't do the algorithm, anybody else?
I mean, a lot of the EL students, and I don't know what they do, but they do something where they tap out with their hands or knuckles and do it mentally somehow.
Kind of like a, yeah.
I don't know what they do, but they do it that way, and that's why you have to.
So let me share with you one strategy that most of our ACE representatives have went, what? How has nobody ever shown me this? And it is called half and double. And it works, I'm not going to show you how it works and go through the whole thing, but it works because of the associative property in math. If you have one number that you can half, double the other number and multiply them together. So 16 is an even number, we can half it. Half of 16, 8. Double 15, 30. 8 times 30. What? Yeah, and it works with decimals, and it works with fractions, and it works every time because it's not a trick. It is grounded in mathematical practice. And this is what we're trying to work with our ACE representatives for. If we have kids who can't remember all of the steps, and we don't carry correctly, and we don't regroup properly, because there's different strategies for all of the different operations. But this is the focus of what we're trying to work with our teachers on. Because so many kids don't learn the same way with everything, so we want to make sure that we're providing them alternative methods, alternative strategies, because if they don't know what they're supposed to do, they can ask the question, well, how can I find it? Because when they get to a test, they're already anxious about it, anxiety's already setting in, their brain is shutting down a little bit, and they get to something that they don't know what to do, and they just totally shut down. And if they can't do this, just like if they're reading, if they can't read the words, they can't comprehend. If they can't do this, they can't move on with the problem, and they're dead in the water before they start. That is part of the conversation.
I'll take the risk and sound a little dumb, but I used that strategy of 10 times 10 and 6 times 5. Why doesn't that work?
Are you talking about the 10 plus
Like if I do 10
6
times 10 and 6 times 5, and put them together. Why doesn't that work?
Because you have to multiply the tens place and the tens place, the tens place and the single.
I see.
Yeah,
I'm
so
only
you end up-
multiplying. I see.
You're doing it across operations.
It's a place value issue.
But I love that you were vulnerable and you're trying it and you're like, well, why doesn't it work? And think about the conversations in class. When kids are trying it and they're like, why didn't that work? There's more learning coming from that than there is, well, let's do another 20 problems with stacking our numbers and trying to multiply. It doesn't work. And when you're talking about teaching to the edges, students with disabilities, they may not know one way, but they might grasp onto another way. Your enriched students or students that need more, they're like, how many ways can you find? And it becomes a game. How else can you do this? How else could you do this? And now they're stretching the brains because they're thinking, or they come to that and they're like, well, wait a minute, that didn't work. Why didn't that work? And then all of a sudden questions are occurring. So I appreciate your vulnerability. It's part of what we're also talking about with identity and agency for kids to be able to see themselves as someone who can do math. Because the message has been all along, if you're in a sport, it's okay to make a mistake because then we get coaching and we fix it. And we're like, next time it happens, try it instead. If you're in a performance arts, whether it's theater, it's band, it's choir, mistakes again. Oh, wait, let's go back and try that again. Try this instead. And it's okay to make mistakes and grow from it. But in math, when you make a mistake, all of a sudden, well, then I'm not a math person. I can't do math. And it's from one mistake, where that mistake could vault them into understanding why it didn't work, and that's where our growth happens. So that's part of our conversations with our ACE representatives, and I appreciate the time to geek out about this a little bit because it's so near and dear to my heart. And so,
Can I interrupt you for a second?
please,
Fun fact, this number blew my mind. Percentage of adults who do not identify themselves as a math person. Just not good at math,
Anybody
never
want
good
to guess?
at math. Percentage of adults that say they are not, just not a math person.
80%.
Higher,
Oh,
90.
higher. 93% of adults. So our children are hearing messages from our parents, maybe from us. Maybe from their teachers. 93%, we're up against a fight here. We're gonna get math
and
better.
how many times did any of you, when you were in the class, if you taught math at all, at whatever grade level, parents came in for a conference and they said, well, I wasn't good at math, so my kid's not gonna be good at math either. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, we have to change the narrative. It is killing our kids. It's killing their process and ability to think they can. So we're really focusing on identity and agency. And so we know, especially with the different math pathways for Algebra 2, the data science, the modeling and reasoning, the computer science, our society is moving into this ever quantitative society, and we have to do more and more with numbers, but in different ways. Not everybody needs that STEM pathway from Algebra 2 to pre-calc to calc. We need people who can look at data, can look at statistics, can do coding. We need those kind of kids and students, and it comes from math. And so we are harming our students when we are asking them to memorize and fit it in during a time test, because that is not what true mathematicians do. True mathematicians sit and they think and they break things apart and they try to figure out why something didn't work, or why does it work here and not work here and it works. So it really speaks to the mindset that we have to change, and the mindset that most of us encountered when we were in school, because we were taught that number and that was it. And if you thought differently, many times maybe the teacher didn't even know. And so now we really want to think about how are ways that we can do this. So I appreciate you going on that journey with me. And I came across this quote, I think it was last week before, through the NCTM blog, and it made me think about, yes, this is what we want our students to be able to do. Because if we teach them tricks and shortcuts and they don't understand why those tricks and shortcuts work, they're not understanding math. They're just understanding a trick. And they don't know when to use it. They use it in the wrong place. They don't use it the right way. And so if we only teach them that, they have nothing else to fall back on. But if we teach them strategies and we teach them to think and we teach them number sense and how to reason through something, they'll always have their math to fall back on because they'll find another way. And so I want to leave you with these quotes that are directly from your ACE reps that you've sent from your district. and tell you a little story that I heard from a teacher yesterday. And she was telling me that, you know, it's been difficult because they have a new curriculum and she's trying to figure out how to fit some of these fluency conversations into her lesson. Totally understand it's hard enough implementing a new curriculum, let alone trying to put some of these other things in here. And she said, you know, I've got this sweet, quirky little kid, a little boy, I think it's probably third or fourth grade. And he is a student who is identified with a disability. And they were doing something in class and it came to a 9 times 7. He goes, I don't know 9 times 7, I don't have it. And she said, and they've even taught him, even though we've talked about not doing this, the 9 finger tricks, you know, the finger, can't use it, doesn't know how it works, can't remember it, can't figure it out. And so she has learned to switch and says now, okay, you don't know 9 times 7, what do you know? He said, well, I know 9 times 5. Great, let's start with 9 times 5. Then we know we need 2 more groups of 9, you know, and how can we use that to figure this out? And so it's been an ongoing conversation with this little boy. And now in class, he doesn't get frustrated. He's not necessarily raising his hand all the time because she's been asking him this question over and over. He will stop and he will say, okay, what do I know? I know. And he is now starting to think about what he knows. And this is a student with a disability who has been struggling, who is now trying to think mathematically and reason his way through something. And for me, that is a huge, huge win. So thank you for sharing this time and letting me tell you some stories and take you on a journey about what is near and dear to my heart, and that's mathematical reasoning and number sense. And so thank you. And if you have questions or you want to hear more, let us know. I could talk forever about it, but I know y'all aren't math people. So I will pass it on to Brian. Do you want the clicker?
I'll just
do it from there.
All right, guys, that was awesome. Like, I get so pumped up here in math, so. I think I would probably identify as a 7%. But, totally shocked by that number. I was like, hey, I really feel alone now. So great to be back here with you guys again. In the past month since we talked at the CD meeting, we put together a video series on the report card, just some things that you can go back and look at to kind of understand. I was not as happy about having my picture up there as Matt Mays was for creating that for me. So, thank him for that. But this is on our CD site. These are on the data website as well. So I put a link to the data website, and you'll have some report card resources there. You'll also have some value added, but just some nice videos for you to go back and ask questions. Yeah, Michelle.
A few more, you need to always wear that blue shirt like John. Just like John.
John Sophia.
Right, John Sophia.
So that's the first thing, just that series is out there if you want to go out. When you go on the data site, there's also the link to the technical documents, things like that from ODE if you want to dive in a little bit further. The next thing, report card wise, that I wanted to talk about is the idea of overall ratings. So if you remember back to September when Mary Ann was with us, she said that as far as overall ratings, they'll be published next year. They won't be published this year, but they are going to use that for federal school improvement identification. Just a quick update on that, they're still working on getting that plan approved. So there's no movement yet on it, but we're just waiting on that. In the meantime, I kind of originally built this last year as we were looking at what might your report card look like, and I did a little bit more work on it. So there's this report card calculator that I put together, and basically, let me share this tab instead. So it just is a normal spreadsheet that allows you to put in your data, and if you want to play around with the numbers a little bit. So what if we had a few more students in the, let's go here. So instead of a 0.1 effect size, what if we had 2 as our effect size there? And then if we go over, oops, I went too far. Went too far again. So it will calculate like how many stars that would be for that component, so that if you want to play around with it, it's your own copy, so don't worry about changing as much as you want. But then down at the bottom here, it will figure out what your overall grade would be. So again, you're not going to see that published anywhere, but if you're just interested, well, we don't have this component, so what would it be? The percentages are all built in there, so it'll determine what yours should be based on that. As far as going forward, next year I'll update it. Remember, there's parts of this report card that are going to change every year because they're using that maximum 2% for the achievement and for parts of gap closing. So those numbers will change, but if you're just looking at this year to get an idea of, if this was a little bit different, what would have happened? I know that might help a little bit for some of you. All right, and then, if I find the right tab. The last thing that I wanted to remind you guys of, Restart Readiness Assessments. I know in many of our districts we are using those. I encourage you to continue using them. One thing that's come up multiple times is you might have a teacher that's using them and they're having trouble seeing their data. The reason that generally is happening is because they don't have a roster created yet. So you may have pre-ID'd them, but if they don't have a roster for linking that kid to that teacher, then they won't be able to log in and see that data. So that's really important. Teachers can actually create their own roster. As a district, you might have a certain way that you want to name those rosters, so that might be a conversation you want to have with principals. If you're not sure how to do that, let me know. I have a video on the data website on creating rosters, that sort of thing, so I can get you in contact with that to help out. The one thing that I really want to talk about, though, with these readiness assessments, they are going to do a refresh of them in January. So the first thing, they're updating the writing checkpoints. So with that, those writing checkpoints, every grade level is going to have a checkpoint that is graded using the new writing rubric. So that's cool. Second thing, all writing is going to be machine scored. So there's not going to be those random ones that you have to hand score. This is the one that I'm really geeking out on. We're told that there's a test authoring system coming. So there's going to be a bank of the released questions. Teacher can go in, create their own checkpoint. So if they don't have time to give 10 questions, they could create one that maybe only has 4 questions that the students could take, and they get to pick the questions out of this test bank to match more with maybe what they're teaching or what they've taught so far in the year. So I'm really excited to see what that looks like, and as soon as I get that, I'll create a video, I'll share with your teachers, whatever you need.
Will they be identified by standard, so it'd be easy to say, I want this standard, and then I'm gonna take these 4
I think they're going to be by, just quick glance of what I heard, I think they're going to just be by the overall category. So it's going to be, geometry, and then it'll be, or informational text, and it would be under there. But, the other thing that they had mentioned is they've extended this contract. I know they've lengthened the contract with Cambium for testing. When they did that, they lengthened this too. So this is not going away at the end of next year. It's something that's going to continue. So that's all I have for today. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out.
All right, thank you. Just to piggyback on Brian's with the Restart Readiness, again, the release questions. Just make sure your teachers understand that if they are using Brian's awesome item analysis document and using those release questions often, and then they give a checkpoint and their kids are doing really well, that's a celebration, but it's also the same questions. So make sure, sometimes they may not understand it and they may get a false sense of what the data is telling them. So it's just something to be aware of. It's wonderful, they're great. I think Brian and I just this week heard from about 3 or 4 teachers, not administrators, but teachers, reaching out to get some clarification on the Restart Readiness Test, and from multiple districts. So they're being used, your teachers are enjoying them. We're getting a lot of positive feedback, Brian, with the data being able to read it. So just put that in your ear. Evaluations, we have our evaluation website. Feel free to check out information. In that, one email I got that was actually a phone call. Don't forget the HQSD tab does not need to be completed to close out an evaluation. And now there is a little like pie bubble on the dashboard that says HQSD. Again, that's just a visual. It does not have to be filled in to be able to complete an evaluation of a teacher or an administrator. Value-added data, I am so happy that I've been able to go out to districts. I've been to 4 this week. I'm going to 4 next week. I love meeting with your teachers. The understanding and the discussions has been very positive. The idea that, hey, this isn't being evaluated to you, but this is what this means. And it's amazing how many, oh my goodness, ahas there are out there. You tend to forget, we really haven't looked at value added for about 3 years. And unfortunately, we've seen a lot of turnover in education, so there's a lot of people who have no idea, even the ones you thought they would. So if you need more help, let me know. On top of that value added on our data webpage that Brian and I work on, I have a couple videos. They're not as entertaining as Brian's. I have 6 PowerPoint presentations. They're short. They're not designed to be PD. They're designed to be a quick little, oh. So if you're working with some teachers, you may say, hey, check out this video or this 7 or 8 slides so that when we come in to talk, you have some foundation. Because that's one of the things that we're finding is that complete misunderstanding of NCEs and triple that when it comes to the predictive model. And because we haven't talked about it, a lot of that has slipped. So please feel free to check that out. Also have a resident educator. I'm going to talk about that in the next slide, but we have a website for that. And then a NWEA MAPS training update that Janelle started that a lot of you have looked at. So first, the RE transition, there's been a lot of discussion. So school districts need to continue developing the RE program. The one thing I keep reminding people, and I want to make sure this is a great group to remind, is that review your CBA. ODE keeps sending out reminders to program coordinators. A lot of the program coordinators are not necessarily in a position that you're in, but you need to probably just take a peek at your collective bargaining agreements on what is being especially paid out when the change is over in the fall. So just to put that in the back of your mind, I know that may not be the most important thing, but it's just a friendly reminder. Next year is when we transition from a 4-year to a 2-year RE license. They'll start this spring releasing them. So any of your RE 2s or 3s that take and pass RESA this year, they're done. They're out of your program. They may advance their license if they want. They paid for 4 years. My suggestion, keep the 4 years, but I understand we probably all would want to hurry up and advance. I get it. Just, remind them then you got to do LPD, CCEUs, and all that other fun stuff. But they'll be able to. So an RE1 this year, next year will be an RE2, take RESA, they're done. RE2 this year, take RESA, they're done. If they don't take it this year, perfectly fine. They just take it next year in your 3rd year. And there's no changes to RESA assessment this year or next year. That's all they said, this year or next year. So I do know some districts were worrying about, some changes. So we got an email from ODE in a spreadsheet that was a little confusing. But feel free to reach out if you have any questions. The last thing is that NWEA maps, we've had a lot of requests for some training. Janelle and I have been working with NWEA, I almost started rapping here. I'll just say MAPS to keep myself safe. We have MAPS training. Right now, we have Friday, January 14th. 13th, thank you. I wish I wrote it on the board. That is a PD/staff day for a large majority of our districts. We need to, take a look at that and see if that fits. At the same time, we are working with them to get another day. Our point person left Monday for Israel for 2 years. She's very excited. She gave me the contact of her assistant. When you email the assistant, she's away for a week. So right now, we're in this holding process, but we've been in communication. We already have about 70 plus people that have jumped in and said that they're interested. So just so you know, we got the ball rolling and hopefully we can get you some more information. Any general questions on evaluation, value added, resident educator, or MAPS? Janelle.
Just wanted to also add that if you could please make sure that you do have your people, that you have that registration filled out if you are looking to add people to that training for planning purposes on our end as we try to coordinate with them. Tom will be communicating with you to give you some options as far as here are the dates we have secured with them because we're trying to coordinate again with the vendor to be able to host this. And I love, that Tom mentioned, what we're trying to do, because this is part of that grant. We're really trying to help you build that internal data capacity so that you have people on your team that receive that professional learning that can go back and next year help with some of these conversations in your district. Take advantage of it. If you have people you'd like to sign up, please make sure that you list the number of people you're looking at.
So when you're signing, just to clarify, and I don't want you to think that by signing up on that spreadsheet, you have to come to the 13th. Right. We just need planning because MAPS is very specific on how many people you're allowed. Do I need a morning and afternoon session? So it's a numbers thing, not necessarily that's exactly what. We just need it for planning purposes. Once we get things ironed out, we'll be reaching back out to actually coordinate, hey, do you want a morning, do you want an afternoon, do you want this day, or hopefully, again, we have 2 days. Anything else? All right. SST,
Hey.
come on down.
Hey, guys.
You're the next presenter.
The price is right. Okay, so good morning. I'm Colleen, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm bringing my computer down because I have a bunch of notes. I only have 2 slides, but I have a bunch of notes. So I'll be sharing the updates from our team at SST9, and I'm going to start with the quote that's in the middle. We just thought that this was really a good quote. Without trust, we don't truly collaborate, we merely coordinate, or at best, cooperate. It's trust that transforms a group of people into a team. And that's really what we believe shared leadership is all about at SST9, and that is from Stephen M.R. Covey. And Barb and I are doing a book study right now, and we have really the team from Perry is doing it with us, so thanks Perry for signing up. But we are going to offer it the second semester. So if you're interested, it's really a pretty awesome book. It's called Trust and Inspire. It's a great read. And we will be offering it again the second semester. Unfortunately, we're not providing books. We're running out of our COVID money. So we're not providing the books, but it still is a great time to collaborate and talk about how we're all leaders, even our teachers. Okay, so Ed Steps. I'll start up here with Ed Steps. So there are always updates to Ed Steps, and the reason why is because the federal government told Ohio, hey guys, you need to do a better job monitoring the districts.
with their plans and the money that we're giving them. So the Department of Education is revamping it, as you all know, with EdSteps. And so we really do recommend that no matter what cohort you're in, that you try to attend our EdSteps support network. They're monthly. But for example, cohort 1, they are looking at the support schools tool. And so you may have to do that for your buildings that have designations. So we're still learning it, and we will give it to you as soon as we can. But it's really helpful if you're at that EdSteps support network, because we share that information to everyone at that time, and we'll help you figure out how to do it. Another change that's coming down is in those of you who wrote your plan, so cohort 2, you wrote your plan in the One Plan platform. There's a new recording option. So the recording of your data in EdSteps in the One Plan platform is optional. However, the federal government has said it's not optional for you to progress monitor your data, your student measures and your adult measures. It's not optional. You have to do that. If you put it in the EdSteps system, then federal programs from the department and then the federal government see that you're tracking your data, right? If you don't do that, that's where you'll have to have a Google form, or if there's a desk review from federal programs, you're gonna have to show them that stuff. If they see it in the One Plan platform, then you're good to go. They see that you're tracking it, they see the data, you're already telling them what you're monitoring, so you'd be good to go in that way. That's new. Our team is still learning, what that looks like, how you're gonna do it, what it all entails. But that EdSteps network, that's where we're gonna be able to work with you. There are 3 hours, but the first hour is really like updates. We're learning. In November, our from federal programs and OII at ODE are coming to answer any questions you have about, okay, how do we attach funds? If we're building a new building, what goal do we put it under? Do we need to have a separate building, goal? So they'll be there to answer those questions, but we do that first hour as learning time, and then really the last hour and a half, 2 hours is time for you to work, and we're all there, so you can ask us questions. So that's a consistent time. It's hard sometimes when you're like, hey, you have any time available? We all are really busy. So if you can at least have one person from your team maybe come to those, it just is helpful because we're there. If you're there, we'd be able to connect and find the time to help you navigate all of the changes that are ongoing with EdSteps.
And tell them all at Stark County this month.
Yeah, this month we're at Stark County. Last month we're rotating months. So some months we're at Tri-County, some months we're at Stark County. But shout out to our Stark County friends who drove to Tri-County and were with us. So thank you so much for that. Does anyone who's been attending those want to say anything about them, or? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but it is nice because you're able to collaborate with one another. You're actually getting work done. So that's kind of a helpful thing. It's not just sitting and getting, you're able to network and talk to one another and share ideas. So we do have this question document. I'm going to put it in the chat now. Even if you, maybe you can't attend, or you have an admin meeting that day and you can't attend, but you have a question for Brian and Morgan from federal programs, you can ask in this document. So make sure that if you have a question related to One Plan, in particular your funding, please make sure that you put it in there, and we'll make sure that we get the answer and share the responses back out if you're not able to be there. Okay, all in, we're excited that we have our first big student academy happening this Friday, so tomorrow. So we have over 200 staff and students coming. We're going to be at Malone University, and we're just very excited about that. So thank you to all of you who have
student teams participating. And if you don't have a student team participating, but you would like to, some of our districts have, 8 kids, and that's it. So you don't have to have a big, massive team, but if you want to know more information, you can reach out to Krista or myself, and we can help support you in how you would make that happen for your students at your school. Okay, designations. So Ohio is in the process of switching the names of the federal designations that schools receive to align with the U.S. Department of Education. So the federal government has to approve those changes. So the federal government gives designations, they have these requirements, but for whatever reason, Ohio gave them different names than what the federal, it doesn't make sense to me, but I'm new at this. So I'm just rolling with it. But they're changing the names. So Ohio is saying, okay, we're gonna call the schools the same thing the federal government calls them. Makes sense to me. So they're in the process of getting that approved from the federal government, and with that, figuring out which schools are going to qualify. Which schools would be in the bottom 5%. And they're figuring out the calculations for that. So that still is kind of we're waiting, the state of Ohio is waiting from the federal government to hear, okay, yes, your plan has been approved. Once that's been approved, that will go out to us, that will go out to you, and they will update the designation list. What we have gotten some clarification on is that your current designations, where you're at, you will still have those. That doesn't make sense to me, but you will still have what you currently have because you have to have 3 consecutive years of data to come off that current designation. I still am not sure why or how you're gonna have like 2 simultaneous designations, or could potentially have 2. So we'll figure that out once we get, clarification from the Department of Education on what that looks like. But we're here to support you when you get your designation letters. You have any questions, reach out to us. If we don't know the answer, which we may not, we will contact OII and try to get clarification for you. But we're working on a system. OII has a nice little, once this all gets released, it's going to be nice and clear about here's why you got this designation and here's how you come off of the designation. That's always been something that I think is like, well, how do I get off? Like, we've never known how to get off. The team at OII is working to develop a document that would be able to clearly state for districts and schools how you would get off that designation, out of that designation, whatever it may be. So I think that's really a positive that they're going to come up with something like that. So we will let you know. They're saying that we should have the designations out in December, but we know how that rolls. So it may be December, it may be later. What they have told us is with those designations, regardless of when they come out, if it's December or ODE's December, February, right? It doesn't matter. The designation, you won't have any like hoops to jump through this year. What they're saying is that anything would come the following school year because you really can't pivot that quickly in the middle of the year. But we will be here to help support you. The other thing down here in the bottom corner is election assistance. So I'm a poll worker for the Stark County Board of Elections. And when I was at my recent training for the November elections, we are really looking to partner with our school districts. A lot of our poll workers are senior citizens, and those machines are big and heavy and hard for them to set up and to put away. In particular, to put away. After being at the polls from 5 o'clock in the morning, when we get done and we're shutting down and it's 9 o'clock at night and you're an 85-year-old senior citizen, it's hard for them to be able to flip those machines and put them back in the cages and get them where they need to be. So what the Board of Elections is looking for is to partner with our high schools, our local high schools in Stark County, and to try to have high school groups come and help us tear down the voting machines. So it's not a lot of work. It wouldn't take a tremendous amount of time. You may sit around for a little bit because we have to wait till everyone who's been in line votes. So depending on the election, you may sit around for a while. But it would be easy work. And what they have said, Aaron at the Board of Elections told me, was that if you have students who come, their request is that they would have an adult, chaperone. It would only need to be like 2 or 3 kids per location. But you get $43 per person goes to the organization that's doing it. So the kids don't get the money and the parent doesn't get the money, but the Board of Elections would then give the school district $43, or let's say it's your band, that's doing it, or your NHS or your student council. Whoever would volunteer would get that $43 per person. And it would maybe be literally to put the machines away. It's not that long because we have to do all of the technical stuff. We would have to secure it. We would have to do the ballot counts, do all the locking of everything. It's a whole thing. Elections are very secure if you have any questions about it. I promise they are. So, but it's just putting the machines down. So it would maybe take 20, 30 minutes maybe to do, but it just would be really helpful. So obviously the election is next Tuesday. We don't have time to get it worked out for November. But we also have elections in May, and we would like to try to get something organized so that way we can reach out to the correct people in each district. So that way we have a nice systematic way of just saying, hey, we need this many kids, you down for it, here are your locations, and get it kind of organized and worked out. So if you're interested, please click on that little survey link, and then I will connect you with the people at the Board of Elections, not before this election. They're a little busy right now, but after. So for that May election and any future election. So thank you for listening and for the public service announcement, but I think it's really important that we teach our kiddos civic responsibility, and it's not a lot. And if any of you are interested in being poll workers, please let me know, because we need some young blood, because COVID really was a hard time for our Board of Election and for our poll workers. So if anybody wants to ask me questions, it's a great time. It's a great time. Let's see. Oh, the last thing I have on here I just want to point out is our newsletter. We release that once a month, and we have a lot of our trainings on that. And so I wanted to talk about one of our favorite trainings that was in our newsletter, and I'm going to put this in the link to the chat because it's a really, really good training. And we have, what I have been hearing in the districts and schools that I work with is that we've had a lot of behavior issues, right, after COVID. And so one of my very favorite trainings that SST provides is our FBA training. And Terrell is offering that training in December 6th, I think. It's in our newsletter, but I've also put the flyer in the chat as well. And you may want to consider having a team attend this, because it really is getting to one of my favorite things, the root cause of why your students might have behaviors. So instead of just a Band-Aid or this kid is terrible, let's ship them out, or we don't know what to do, this training allows you to think deeper, and it could help you, if you have a team go, you could help set up systems and structures like my friends at Sandy Valley do. When we have students who have behaviors, you might be able to get a team together to really root cause and figure out what's going on with that kiddo. How can we support them? How do we support the teacher? And in that training, it could be something as simple as like maybe the teacher wears the perfume that their mom wore and their mom passed away, right? And they're a middle school kid, and every time they smell that perfume, they get upset, and instead of crying, they're gonna act out because they don't want to look, emotional in front of their peers. So it's getting really deep into the why behind kids have behavior issues. And it allows us to maybe try to figure out what we can do to support them. So I love the training and think it's really great. And if you haven't done it, or you have people who are struggling in your districts, principals, intervention specialists, it's not necessarily it doesn't mean that they need an IEP if you do an FBA, right? It's about, this kid is struggling, let's figure out what's going on so we can support them. And it does not have to be your school psych who is doing an FBA. So just wanted to throw that out there. The training's awesome. If you have questions, email Terrell. She'll be happy to answer them. Okay, the next slide we have, and I don't have much, but this is just the Future Forward Ohio. It's the state's plan to help students recover from the impact of COVID. And if you are interested in sharing how you're using your COVID relief funds with the state, there is the Future Forward Ohio Spotlight. And so the department is always asking us, hey, do you have any districts who want to share what they're doing? And we're putting it to you to say if you want to share what you're doing, if you have something innovative, you can go ahead and do that. So I'm putting the links to all of the Future Forward stuff in the chat. And if you have any questions about it, let us know. So thank you. Sorry I took a little bit longer, but those are some big things. So thank you.
Thanks, Colleen.
You're welcome.
Diane. Good morning. Brian, you want to click on that? Usually I celebrated today, National Day. The most important National Day today is Starbucks, so I see all the Starbucks cups. There we go. Today is the first day of their Christmas brews or whatever, so yeah. It's also National Sandwich Day, and so if you want to celebrate that, if you didn't know, there's a whole history there. There was the Earl of Sandwich who liked to gamble. He did not like to leave his gambling table, so he asked for bread and meat to be delivered to him, and then that became a sandwich. So there's your little trivia tip for the day. So we go. One thing that's not up there, I'm going to say it first, I will forget. If you remember at the CD meeting, I talked about the rules and regulations of gifted are being. There have been some stakeholder meetings, if that's what you would call them. I know Kathy was in one and Denise was here, she was in one. They are not public yet. Kathy, do you want to say anything about what you learned or heard? I'm putting you on the spot, I apologize.
Yeah, there were just some things that are different. Let me pull up my email to you. One is that right now, districts can decide what ongoing PD hours are, the number, and the state's going to say, no, it must be 5. Everybody, after your 60 hours in 4 years, must do 5 hours per year. That's one. Cluster minimums, I don't know, I get creative with my clusters, but the state has said that a cluster now has to be 3 to count as instead of 2 as a cluster. They're removing the creative thinking identification in both grade bands, but they're requiring science and social studies to be identified in both grade bands. And your written education plan must have a parent conference or meeting. Presently, the requirement is a signature, so we all mail them home. Or whatever, but now you must have them a meeting or a conference. So those were the 5 main things. Also, the one thing that caught my attention also was a regularly scheduled collaborative planning in curriculum development instruction for for your teachers who are serving students from a GIS.
As I said, once these become public and public opinion is asked for, we will put those kinds of, I will put those kinds of things into a bulleted email, so hopefully you will comment on them. Some are okay, like creativity, okay. Science and social studies, that's okay, except then you have to serve them, and if you don't, then you get dinged. That's always my word. So there are some things that will need commented on. I will send that out. So thank you, Kathy, for sharing that. I sort of put her on the spot. In Gifted Land, our Visual and Performing Arts Assessment is coming up. Thank you to Canton City Schools for helping us host that. It's at the Arts Academy at Summit on Saturday, November 19th. This year we have 43. We've had up to 80 at one point pre-COVID. Last year we had 30, so we're building back up. The nice thing about this one is we do have a dancer. Thank you, Perry. But it's forced us to get some dance assessors, which is good. And we have a lot of drama students this year, which is excellent. Also, remember the old TV show Fame? This day is like that. You know how there were kids singing in the hallway? It's sort of like that. It's really sort of cool. So if you want to experience it even for a little bit, it's in the morning from 8 to about 11:30. If you want to experience Fame-like school, come on over. But let me know, please. Also, if you have some arts teachers who would like to maybe train to be assessors, we don't offer training anymore. They can come that day and sit with their area, and that would be considered a training. Okay. Professional development opportunity. First of all, with high impact, this coming year, we will offer the gifted bands or gifted certification again. So if they're looking for gifted hours, that will be available this year. Deidre Stafford, who was here pre-COVID, I believe 2019, will be coming back February 21st. We are working on her presentation. She's very good at developing what we ask her to. So it will be for all grade levels, all subject areas, and she will make sure those are addressed. The last thing, all the things that Brian talks about when we talk about report card, et cetera, we know is correct. I don't know what the word is, correct, putting it into EMIS, whether it's Dazzle or eSchool Plus. So we are having a joint EMIS gifted meeting next Tuesday upstairs. Carol Popo will be running it from the EMIS side. We ask that you, if you can't come, it will also be virtual, be hybrid. But we're asking that you come with a gifted person with their EMIS coordinator. I think it's good. We really don't have new things. But even within our own gifted meeting, we'll say, oh, you do that? I never did that. So it'll put us all on the same page. So we'll be having that next week. So, and that is all. Amanda and Janelle. Thanks, ma'am. Sure. I'm sorry. Could you run those?
Good morning, everybody. Our updates are quick and pretty easy, thankfully, and surprisingly from the world of ELA. It doesn't usually happen that way. It's kind of easy to follow Diane's updates. So we are still waiting for the K-3 dyslexia training to be released. We keep hearing late fall, so as soon as we have word, we will be sure to let you know. We know that's quite putting us kind of in a timeline crunch, but we will make do with what we have. And when it is released, just so you know, it will be housed in the learning management system under each person's Ohio ID. So that's how they'll be able to access it. And the nice thing about that is then they'll always be able to go back to it and refer to that training. Those materials will always be accessible. So that's a positive from that. Additionally, this is, curriculum directors probably know more about this, so if you're sitting in the room or on the call and you want some additional information, I encourage you to reach out to your curriculum directors, but we did host webinars with all of the vendors that are currently on the approved dyslexia vendor list. And so we have those as recordings. We have any resources and documents that they've shared with us on the CD site. And you can scroll down, it's under resources, and there's something titled Dyslexia Vendors. You can go there, you can listen to the recordings if you weren't able to join us live. And as they continue to share things with us, or they feed them to Janelle, we'll keep updating that site. We know we're waiting on some things still from a couple of vendors that we'll keep adding to that site. So that just is something helpful for you to know, and just a reminder that that's there for you. Any questions about any of that?
All right. So we just wanted to give a quick AFib. And so just like Matt, we're really excited about being able to work with all of these educators who are really great leaders back in their buildings and across their districts. And so Janelle and I just wanted to share sort of where we're at in the process as concisely as possible. And so I feel like, we've done all of the face-to-face trainings back in August. We've met with them at our lead educator meetings. We do monthly check-ins, and that's been really helpful. We've also had some one-on-one conversations, answered emails, and have found that people are really taking this back and applying it at deep levels, really examining, their block, really thinking about the conversations they're having in the grade level meetings and so forth. So it's been really encouraging. But I feel like one of the things that's really set us up for success is asking them to be reflective on their practices. And so one thing we learned through our coaching network, where we've done so much work with Jim Knight, is the power of video reflection. And so at this point, we've asked our teachers to take a look at the practice that they've selected to work on during the fall semester and watch themselves delivering that instruction. They haven't turned it into us. They haven't shared it with anyone else at this point unless they wanted to with their teams, but they've just watched themselves. And the feedback that we've gotten has been really positive. They've recognized some places that they're doing really great stuff and it's been affirming, but it's also helped them to see places where they can continue to refine their practice. And so you'll see that based on our timeline right now, they've done that once. We've let them just sort of self-reflect openly based on what they observed. Moving forward, they'll record themselves one more time with that strategy, and we're going to give them some look-fors. We actually are in the process of finalizing some checklists that they can use, that we can use, going out to watch them in the classroom, and then potentially even administrators could take a look at to make sure that we're all on the same page about what these practices should look like as they're being implemented. So we're excited about that. Is there anything you want to add about that, Janelle? All right. So moving forward, you can see there's a bit of a tipping point then moving into January. We've been working on word recognition, so phonemic awareness, basic phonics skills, looking at some of those advanced things too, like syllabication and morphology. So that's been our focus throughout the fall. They're going to continue to implement those practices with their colleagues and have conversations about that in TBTs, but we'll also be shifting towards some language comprehension strategies, looking at vocabulary fluency and comprehension in the spring, so that we're looking at both sides of that simple view of reading that we've all come to be familiar with. So we're excited about that. You can see on the next slide here that feedback's been really positive, and I think again you'll see if you read these later, a trend that emerged was that self-reflection was playing a big role in this. And we know that's so important for our students, so self-regulatory practices, stopping, planning, thinking about how we're doing, changing our plan, making refinements, and we know that's important in professional practice as well. So we're very excited about this moving forward. And then the last thing we wanted to share with you were just some resources. So I don't know if you're familiar with the National Center on Improving Literacy, but it's a big research institution. They work a little bit more deeply with students with learning disabilities, and dyslexia is, of course, just one. So you'll find here a couple links. All of those black bullets are links. So there's a tool there for dyslexia toolkits. You'll find lots of resources there. There's a brief called Defining Dyslexia that helps us just have clarity around how we're describing what it is and what it's not. There's also a tool there about myths and facts. What you don't see that I added actually while I was sitting here today, it's a link that will take you to a place where you could actually sign up for their newsletter. So if you're interested in getting updates from them, I've just added a link there where you can jump right in, put your email in, and they'll send you updates to resources. I just happened to think of that this morning because I ran into Dr. Sarah Seiko a couple weeks ago, and she works for them and said there's big things they're getting ready to release. So that might be something to keep an eye on or to pass along to the people who are in charge of literacy in your districts. Thanks, Brian. And then lastly, I just added an IES practice guide that we found out about yesterday in a state network. This is actually for preschool, so it's called Preparing Young Children for School. You'll see math and literacy information, kind of an overview of the literature at this point. A lot of building number sense and mathematical practices in preschool, as well as how we're supporting those early literacy skills well and setting our kids up for success. We know that many of you have preschool units, and we just wanted to give you another tool at your disposal. So that is it from us. Thank you. And I'm going to pass it off to Dale.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good morning. Talk a little bit about ELA as well, but I'm going to talk about the ELA standards for 6 to 12 for history, social studies, science, and the technical subjects. We have a lot of new 6 through 12 teachers in the areas of science and probably social studies and the technical subjects. And a lot of times they're not aware of those standards. Purpose behind them, as I'm looking at them, is not to make our science teachers reading teachers. It's to have them understand that the students being able to read in our content areas and write in our content areas helps develop their scientific or history or social studies literacy. And if we get them to do that, they can make informed and better decisions as they grow older. That's the link right to that section of the ELA standards. And it is set up, bring it down a little bit, it doesn't matter, because the first part of it is the history and social studies, and then you go down and you get into the science and technical. But what it is, they're broken up, each of them in the reading and writing are broken up into grade bands. So there are the standards for 6 through 8, 9, 10, and 11, 12. So I have my middle school, high school group and my STEM group coming up, and we're going to go over and take a look at these at our lead educator meeting on those nights, and just be aware, just so you guys are aware of it, and like I said, make some of them, and hopefully they will spread that along to some of those newer teachers who may not be aware that those are there. Okay. And we can go to the next one. Oh, I get it. Can I do it? Yeah. And the other thing is, last year we had these learning lunch boxes, and all of a sudden we had this thing that it came to me. It's a partnership between the Ohio ESC Association and COSI in Columbus, and they're going to provide them again. I received an email I think 2 weeks ago, and we are going to be getting them, and they send them only, they told us it was going to be through the ESCs. So we're going to be getting approximately 650 of these, and they're allocating about 30 per district. So what we're going to do when they come in, the theme of it is dinosaurs. I'll be honest with you, I have no idea I know where it can hit 2nd and 4th grade. I just don't know if it's going to be so primary that it fits better in 2nd. When they come in, I can take a look at that, and I'll let you know that when I find that out. When they arrive, probably I know I'm going to do a Google form and asking you if you want to participate or not. And then it's probably going to be want to participate, no, and then I'll just, when we get that information, what we'll do is Sam will sort them out. We'll send your allocation of the kits to you. Last year they were just a small box, and individual kids could use them. I knew Louisville ended up, I don't know how you guys did it, but they had some that they had over at the elementary that they got even before we did, so somehow they had heard about the program. And I know they just used them with the kids. Some schools just send them home with certain kids. So what we'll do is we'll get them out to you guys. We're going to deliver them when you get them. We're going to actually deliver them to your district central office, and then from there, the district will decide how you guys are going to distribute the allocation. Okay, and that's it for me, and I'll send it over to Tom.
When you see me coming up, you know the end is near.
Yeah.
I just have a few reminders. Your theater drama people have been
giving me their dates and performance information so that we can get it on our ESC website. So if you stop right there, Brian, you can see that there is a performance of White Christmas this weekend at Jackson School for the Arts. Once Upon a Mattress is also this weekend at Canton South High School. But if they give me this information, we will add it here, and they know that. I've sent this to your theater drama people and to your music people. If they feed me the information, we will put it on our website so that people can see that all of the great performances we have happening in our area. So many of them are on there already, and we're happy to add more. There was a Google form that I sent out so that we get the same information from everybody. So if I get that information, or if somebody needs me to send you the Google form, I'm happy to do that. But I didn't bother you with it, it just went directly to your teachers. So please look there and support our local schools and all of the performances they do. I send out this information below, the 2023 Art and Music Educators of the Year Award. I know it's early, they do it this time every year because they have a long process of evaluating and looking at all the applications. But the forms are there for art and for music. I sent it to each of you, but this is just a reminder. Those are due, I believe, January 5th, I think is the day I have on there. So please take the time to give that some thought, nominate. They're always looking for those outstanding teachers, and you have so many of them in your district that are working so hard. And you know that yourself because of the work they do with your students. Okay? And that takes us to the end, unless you have any other questions for me regarding the arts. We're going to start in the room, and we're going to look at these two questions. What questions